AgNow Weather Time, Matt Makins here. As we look at the week ahead, heat is going to be spreading from the southern to the central plains. Not to say it's not going to be elsewhere, but this area highlighted will have the most numerous daily record highs, warmest overnights, higher heat indices, those kind of things. So if you're in this area, especially north central Oklahoma, south central Kansas, your heat indices during the next week will climb to 105, perhaps even 110 degrees. As far as crop conditions, let's turn to the soils. And the soils have been drying out pretty rapidly in some cases. So let's take a look at that now. So what we have here is the drought footprint as of June. That's the map on the left there. And August. This is the most recent one that came out this week. And you can see some notable differences. The drought growth. A couple of areas pop out in my mind. That's going to be the Northwest and the Northern Rockies. Parts of the plains, yes, but notice the Ohio Valley. So eastern portions of the corn country there, we have rapid onset of drought here over the last couple of months. Now, about 21% of cattle are in drought areas versus 8% back in June. Oregon, West Virginia, Wyoming, these states really have poor pasture conditions. You know, more than half of these states are rated very poor or poor. You get into Arizona, it's about 50-50. Texas is nearing a 50% rating for poor and very poor pasture. So we've got some work to do in that regard for our grasses. Now, as far as feed, you know, we've got good supplies, alfalfa and hay, really good totals out there. It's a good time to buy if you can find some well-priced product there. Just know that the drought impact has increased for those areas since June as well. And by this time next year, they may be in pretty tough shape. Now, 45% of our winter wheat areas are in drought right now, and that's going to increase into next spring too. So, long story short here is that the drought impact has grown during the summer months, and it will continue as we go forward. Speaking of going forward, I rambled long enough there. Let's take a look at the timeline. Here's the animation of storms playing behind me. Like I do at this time, I'll shut up and let you watch the progression on your own. From the next 7 days to even 10, I'll expand a little bit. Let's take a look at the moisture totals. This is just for the early part of the period, next 3 days. A little bit of a monsoonal flow here from Mexico into Arizona, New Mexico into Colorado and Utah. The Pacific Northwest will catch some water, and some of these pockets here along the Mississippi, parts of eastern Iowa and western Illinois. That's kind of the most notable area. As we get into the 7-day forecast, watch how things have expanded. Still the monsoonal flow here, Pacific Northwest, but we've added quite a bit of water here from days 3 to 7. And that's throughout the upper Midwest into the Midwest, so parts of corn country there. As we look at just 10 days in general, where are we spreading the water? Well, the West is kind of focused on the earlier period. The Southeast has gained water as you go from days 7 to 10. With our weekly outlooks now, let's compare how this upcoming week will go through the next 4. So here's week number 1. We have the heat focused on the central plains we talked about. Into week number 2, there's going to be some pockets here, some cooler weather for the northern plains. Here is week number 3 and week number 4. Yeah, occasionally we'll have some cooler areas moving through. But by and large, we're going to spread out that heat from the west and kind of start to cover quite a bit of the country here, in even parts of Canada too, and down into Mexico. We're going to cover that heat as we go throughout September. So September probably picks up where August is kind of leaving off, if you will, and then we'll transition into a drier and hotter phase there later in September. And I'll show you that now. We have more moisture on the map for week number 1 and also into week number 2. You get into 3 and 4, and that area of moisture starts to shrink down. Still some pockets here, don't get me wrong, but as far as a lot of crop country, we're going to see some drier conditions working in progressively from week to week on into September. And for today's video, I'll just close with a highlight item of what we're watching for next week. The heat area from the Central Plains expands out toward the east. That's going to be mostly the very, very end of August. But within that, with that heat area, this area highlighted here, the rapid onset of drought, it's a combination of the heat, not a great deal of precipitation. The preset maps did show you some water, but it's not in surplus. So overall a hot, dry forecast to go through late August into very early September for this region. So we'll likely see those drought maps coming in the weeks ahead, popping up with higher drought numbers in these areas. We'll have more on that in next week's AgNow weather forecast. Until then, Matt Makins here. Blessings to you and yours.